Hi guys, hope you're all okay. So I'm back for my part 4 of my fertility journey. Sorry I've not posted in a while, just been extra busy. So just to sort of continue from where I left off on my part 3. And obviously I chatted about being on the menopause and not really understanding what was happening. Once we went to the doctors and he said, yeah, you're on the menopause. I said, well, is there anything that you can do? Obviously I can't carry on like this. He then says, yeah, there's HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy that we can give you. It needs to be prescribed by your own GP. But we can start you off on that and see if that works for you. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Obviously, at this point, I'd done, I think it was 6 weeks without nothing. So I was absolutely desperate to start anything at this point. And I know this sounds really, it's not silly because it was the way that I felt. But at that time, and how my emotions were and how my hormones were, like, I could have jumped off a bridge. And I truly believe that. I felt I'd never been in a darker place in my life. And for somebody to say that they're going to give me something to help me, of course I was going to accept it. It was such a difficult time for me hormonally. I felt like being told and going on the change, I felt like that was the hardest thing. Even when the doctor said I wasn't even going to be a mum, like I felt that was the hardest point for me. Like I was 25 and that was happening to me. It was just a really tough time. In a brighter light, we got the news back from the embryo transfer, the egg collection. And as you know, we got 16 eggs and they obviously put them together to make the embryos. So in total, we'd got 8 embryos, which was obviously amazing. So how that works was they were saying to us that we have to thaw 3, which that sounds awful because it's like your own little DNA. It's like, I suppose it's like a little baby, but yeah. So you have to thaw 3 and put the strongest 2 in. So the third one obviously just gets basically thrown away, which sounds absolutely awful. But for me, I was like, well, that's fine. We've got 3 chances at this. Obviously, you know, with us being 8, we'll thaw 3 the first time. Put the 2 strongest one in. You know, if again it doesn't work again, then we'll thaw 3 again, which is then 6, and then we'll always have 2 left over. So you've got 3 really good chances. So initially that wasn't a problem for me to thaw 3, and I was thinking, right, well, we're going to get the best out of the stronger 2 anyway. So all well and good. We'd obviously got 8 embryos, and that was, yeah, really positive. So obviously, as I said, going in for my second operation, it wasn't a problem. Was it December sometime? I finally started my HRT. Thank goodness. And they put me on something called a Duo, which is progesterone and someone else. Basically, one so that I can still have a period, and one to give me my hormones. So that was fine, and I did feel a big relief when I started to take like that. Like the side effects did release slightly. They were still there, but they did release slightly. So I was feeling much better being on them. However, it was then, obviously we were getting to the end of the year. I was obviously recovering from my op. I'd felt like I'd recovered. For me, it was really important that I was like, right, when are these embryos going in? Like, I felt like we'd waited so long at this point. Like, I think we were on like the 3-year mark of actually trying for a baby. So for me, it was really, really important to be like, right, I've waited this long, I want to get them in. So when we went to see them in December, I mentioned about obviously the new year and hopefully getting to start straight away in the new year and having them put in. And he said, yeah, that was obviously absolutely fine. A lot of people didn't quite agree with what I was doing. I think that was because they were wanting my body to recover better. You know, obviously it was only September since I had the operation. Obviously then going through the change, and then mentally that's sort of having a big toll on my health. But I'd waited this long for this. Like, nobody could literally tell me what to do. I wanted this. So we went in and we spoke to obviously Delta, the lady who was dealing with the fertility clinic, and she said, yeah, that's fine. Obviously by the time you sort of have your embryos put in, it'd be sort of like middle of February, because obviously by the time you open, you've got to then start your treatment, which is about 4 weeks. Basically you have to then get your your womb prepared. So that was exactly what we did. So we sort of enjoyed his first as what we thought was going to be our last Christmas together. Sort of stopped drinking, ready for getting my womb prepared for these embryos. So went in. I think the date of the transfer was like the 11th or the 12th. And that's how much of a good memory I maybe have. Don't ask me the rest. So obviously we went in and we were just super, super excited. Like, I couldn't believe it. We went in. There's another 2 other couples with you. You all get sort of given a place. It was amazing. So going down in the fertility clinic for the transfer, and it was very surreal. Like, I think this moment was just something that I'd craved for such a long time, and it hadn't even happened yet, but I felt like I was one step closer. Went into the room, and there's a couple of nurses, and obviously there was the doctor that sort of pops the embryos in there, and Liam was able to sit by the side of me, and the left at the back of me there was like a window. And the window is where, like, the lady with the embryos puts the embryos. It's like and it sounds really bad, but it's like in a little tube. And obviously the doctor can then pop the tube in and see it. But what we've got here is we've got a screen, like, like we're supposed when you have a normal scan. You can see the screen, so you can see my womb. I've got a tilted uterus, which obviously I didn't realise until this point. So they were really struggling to sort of get the right angle to pop them in. But the one word, as soon as once he'd sort of got the tube up there, if you like, he then called for the DNA, and literally I broke my heart. Like, I was sitting there and I was like, that is my DNA, that's our DNA, and I just couldn't stop crying. I was completely besotted with myself, and obviously the nurse and everyone had to say, you need to calm down because you need to hold really still, because they ain't gonna like going in if you're like puffing and panting. So I obviously had to control that, which was really difficult. Just somebody saying it's your DNA. I can't explain to you how much that means. Like, this was mine. Like, it was mine. Yeah. And we watched on the screen, and you saw it, and you saw like a little flash, and you saw these 2 little embryos, boom. And that's it then, they're obviously in your room. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to stand up, I don't want them to fall out. And there was obviously, there was lots of different sort of emotions, I suppose, to how you're feeling. But basically, they just get you straight up. And I always remember walking to the chair to obviously get my clothes back on. And I always remember just looking down at my belly and going, I'm just going to protect you for the rest of my life as much as I possibly can. Like, I promise that I'll do whatever it takes. That was a big thing for me. And I remember we come home, and I remember having cornflake cakes and custard, and Liam wouldn't let me move off the sofa. It was really nice. Obviously bearing in mind at this point as well, like, I still wasn't working, so I was able to sort of relax for the full 2 weeks, if you like, of what they say you need. So then what you have to do is you have to do a home pregnancy test at home. It's about 2 weeks and a few days after the transfer. I think it was like the 28th or something. And everything seemed okay. Like I had a little bit of lower, like just period pains. But you never know what's good or bad, to be honest. Like, obviously I've never been in that situation before. I've never felt those pains as such. I suppose you do as a period, but you don't really know if that's a good or a bad thing. So you just have to play it by ear. You can't really, you don't know how to feel, to be honest. You're sort of in limbo for 2 weeks because people around you are being positive and you're thinking, you know, I suppose it still might not work. But you're trying to stay positive as well. But you want to stay positive for your body because you don't want the embryos being in what I was like. I don't want them being in like an unhappy tummy. But in the same sense, you can't help how your mind was feeling. Like my mind was going everywhere. I didn't quite understand what was happening. Anyway, we got through those 2 weeks, and we did the test, and yeah, it was negative. It was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. I remember I just lay on the bed and just cried. And Liam has his own way of dealing with things. He'll like go in the garden and like start tidying things up and that, and we don't really speak. It's really quite, it's not very nice considering you've been through it all together, but that's his way of dealing with it. That's fine. But for me, it was just a cry. So from there on out, I decided that, right, okay, that's fine. You know, we've got another 2 chances. You know, not every time IVF works on the everyone's first chance. It's fine. So I decided to obviously pick myself back up. By this point, I'd put on a fair bit of weight. I was eating for the sake of eating, emotionally. And yeah, I wanted to do something about it. I needed to sort my head out. So I decided to train, obviously for a different job. That's when I decided to become a driving instructor. And yeah, I started to go to the gym once a week, and I can't tell you what that did for me. Obviously the doctors were really, really good. They were really wanting to help me in regards to counselling and to give me obviously antidepressants, but I was so stubborn, and I probably still am a little bit stubborn, that I just didn't want to take that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong whichever way I would have decided. But for me, at that time, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to still mentally continue to try and be strong, however, whatever that meant. And I didn't want to maybe accept the help, you know. I thought I could do this on my own. So that's what I did. And we then decided that, hang on then, what we'll do is, let's wait a year. Let's wait a year, 18 months, however long. Let's get my career sorted. Let's get a bit better financially. I still know that they're there. They keep the embryos in storage, in frozen, if you like, which I hate saying, but it's true, for 10 years. So of course we weren't going to wait that long. But they're there. So let's get ourselves sorted. Let's get my mental health sorted first. So I started to go to the gym once a week, turned into twice a week. I started doing a little bit of running. The weights did start coming off me. I was feeling better, you know. It's always good when, you know, you lose a couple of pounds, naturally you feel better. Not like that was the be all and end all with what I weighed, but it did make me feel better. It did. My training was going well with the driving instructor, and I felt like this was something that I could do. Yeah, so we'd waited for the 2 years. Pretty much it was ended up being about 2 years. At this point, I'd become obviously a driving instructor, and I started working for myself, which was, for me, it was unbelievable. Like, I couldn't fathom how I'd even got to that point, especially with no help, you know. I say no help, I say no professional help. I'd obviously got the support from like my family and friends, and obviously Liam, which was huge, of course. I couldn't have got through it without them. I'd ended up losing 3 stone at that point, so I felt like things were better. I really did. I felt like financially we were better. Things started to really look up. So we then decided to go back in for a second round. And obviously during this time I was still going to Manchester and having like my regular checkups and, you know, seeing Mr. Smith, and he was always asking like how we're getting on. And anyway, you know, I was always under good supervision with regards to my health was concerned, you know, that thing wasn't coming back. So we went for the second one. Again, they thawed 3 out. They popped 2 in. It was just so emotional, but because mentally I felt better, and financially and everything, that we were in a better situation, we were like, it's gotta work this time. Like I've taken some time out. I've not changed who I am, but I've decided to get up here, and that's what's most important. You need to sort what's going on in your mind to ever continue on such a journey like this. And I felt like I'd done that. So when we then went for the second one, again, it was super emotional, but we were super excited. Like, this was it. You know, a lot changed in 2 years. Obviously, the heartache's always still there, and people around you are still getting pregnant and having babies, and you know, and obviously they have to tell you that, and I understand that's difficult for other people, but it was also really difficult for me. But that was fine. I'd go off and I would have my time and I would have my moment to myself, because although I wasn't happy for those people, it was always so difficult for me, and nobody will ever realise how difficult that was for me. But we went in for the second attempt. We were obviously very happy, very excited. Again, we thawed 3, popped 2 in. Again, it was another 2 weeks. I did it a very similar time than the last time as well. So it was just like in February time we did it. And the date that we had to test it on was the 2nd of March, I remember, so it was only a little bit after. I was so positive. I'd had like headaches, all sorts. Obviously I'm on progesterone anyway through my HRT, which we had to increase and doubly increase because, you know, my symptoms were just too severe. But so, and plus they give you progesterone, so potentially that's where the headaches could have come from, but I didn't realise that at the time. And I remember that I couldn't go into the bathroom, I couldn't check, like I'd done what I needed to do, and I couldn't go in. I just had a feeling that it hadn't worked. I just got a horrible feeling that it hadn't worked. And Liam just confirmed that for me. Basically, he was the one that checked the test. And I remember going into the bathroom, and I remember just being sick. I remember throwing up. And I think that was just because of all the emotion. I think I was just drained from it all. But I also think that was shock, because nobody was expecting it. I wasn't expecting it. Like, I'd changed, I'd done so much. Like, I felt there's nothing more that I could have done. And obviously it was still negative. That one hit me really, really hard. Really hard. I was poorly for a few days. However, I think I was only off work for 2 days and I was straight back into work. And however hard that is, and that was really difficult for me, I actually regret doing that now. I should have had that time off. I should have had that time just to recap and understand what had happened. Once that second one didn't work, it wasn't for us going to be a big rush to jump in for the third and the last time. For me especially, I felt like I kept holding it off because I was like, I don't want to do it. At least when everyone ever asked, I was like, yeah, we've still got 2 left, we've still got a chance, we've still got a chance. And it was always that hope in the back of my mind that we've still got hope, we've still got hope. Obviously during this time I'd had to go see different consultants about my menopause because that was getting really severe, which was really stressful. I'd then gone on to a different type of medication, and it had taken them 5 years to put me on the right one. So obviously, yeah, I've been going through this now for 8 years. So for the last 3 years, I feel like I've had to still increase the dose on what I'm on now. And sometimes I feel like they don't even work, but there's always room for increasing, which is fine. I think it's just because my symptoms are so severe. I'm going to leave it there, and then on my next story I'm going to chat about the final IVF, and how it's okay not to be okay. There's so much stigma about that now, and yeah, just to sort of update you on obviously my journey and how I managed to handle things and how I'm still managing to handle things. You know, it's definitely not easy, and you know, I have my good days, I have my bad days, but I just want to obviously continue always saying that I appreciate everyone's support, and the feedback that I have from these videos is immensely just positive. So I really do thank you all for watching them, and I do hope that some people do manage to get something out of them. If not, just have a listen. It helps me just to share that as well. So I appreciate you all for listening. If anyone's got any questions or comments, then please feel free to message me, or leave me a comment. And I would really appreciate if you would subscribe and give us a like. So until next time, again, I continue to thank you. Yeah, lots of love. Take care. Thank you.